Hey friend, I have a guided reading for you today. As always, feel free to gaze at the cards while I'm talking, see what tickles your own intuition. Remember, some things may resonate more and some things may resonate less, but the important part is that you're growing. So let's go ahead and get started. Guiding our reading today, we have the Green Woman. So the Green Woman really kind of is about helping us to understand that, the circumstances in our life, whether we typically perceive them as positive or negative, all really are there for our growth, right? You would think of like when you scatter seeds, right? When a seed lands, that it grows right there, regardless. The soil could be rocky, the soil could be soft, could be sunshine, could be rain, but growth happens where you're at, all right? So you're starting to come into this understanding that all the circumstances in your life really provide you this opportunity for your growth, for your own unique experience of things, okay? Starting out, I have the Nine of Swords. Now, Nine of Swords would typically be our anxiety card, the waking up from the nightmare. Now, in this circumstances, I'm looking at this as possibly you might have overextended yourself on something, some action you took, or, your resources, and you really weren't paying attention, but then the universe comes and snatches that rose out. You see the crow here taking that blue rose away. In the story of the swords in this particular deck, you have these two fairy girls, and they're taking care of this rose garden. They find this beautiful magical blue rose, and while they're tending it, the rose ends up wilting. So they end up going to the queen for help. Queen comes along, she waters the rose, she really kind of pours magical energy into it, and what she doesn't notice is that while she's doing this, the energy of, the nurturing that she's putting into this rose is causing the rest of the garden to grow up around her. And she doesn't really notice this until the end. So I'm getting this kind of idea that, maybe you didn't notice the effects of some sort of action you were taking quite until the end here, right? And the universe kind of comes along with this little wake up call for you. And this might have been a bit of a surprise, right? We have the Knave of Cups. That's our Page of Cups. You would typically think in the Rider-Waite Smith, you would see the fish coming out of the cup. All right, so maybe you were caught off guard. Maybe you were, feeling that freedom and love for life and that joy and expression. And then where you were pouring your energy in, something happened as a result, some sort of surprise, something you weren't quite expecting, right? Maybe we were looking at things kind of like in a distorted type of view. We have the moon card up next. You would think of in the moon card in the Rider-Waite Smith, you would have the wolf and the dog, and then that Piscean creature between them, right? That unconscious and subconscious. Maybe you were ignoring certain signs, maybe certain intuitions or whatever, or just things just appeared a little bit differently for you, right? The moon really kind of brings in that energy where things kind of tend to look different than they actually are. Now, of course, you have the ability to handle it, right? It's not like some massive loss that's causing your circumstances to be like drastically altered, but you do want to pay attention. We have this Nine of Wands, okay? The Nine of Wands would be that, fences make good neighbors, that black belt, that preparedness, right? You can make certain decisions and you can set certain boundaries within yourself and with others so that way you can have this healthy connection, you can have this healthy management, right, of your resources. Maybe you were so focused on wanting something to work out a certain way, right? We have the Five of Swords, right? That is our victory at all costs, right? And that is, like I said, we had the two fairy girls, and you see that blue rose wilted. And, that's when they go, okay, well, what do we need to do to make this succeed? And that's where they go to the queen. So you probably, the reason that you might have overextended yourself or a resource is that you really, really, really want something to come true so much that you're willing to pour into it and pour into it and really kind of put all that extra effort, right? And this is, of course, anything you can handle, right? We have the Knight of Swords next, right? The Knight of Swords in this deck, she's very trained, very honed. She, knows her skills, her knowledge, and she could really handle any circumstances. So this could still be a learning experience for you. And of course, you know that you have the ability to meet whatever is going on. There is potential here with this. This is the Empress, right? Like I said, the seed will grow wherever it's planted, or it'll try to grow wherever it's planted, depending on the ground. Like I said, rocky or soft, doesn't matter, right? So there is something growing. You have, in fact, planted a seed, and something is beginning to take form, right? The thing that you want to come true, the very thing that you're like, okay, I'm going to put this effort into and put these resources into, you have in fact successfully germinated those seeds. You have in fact successfully planted the thing, and you are going to get some sort of result for it. Okay. Now, this does, of course, bring us into a little bit more maturity when it comes to the management of our energy and resources, right? When I look at the King of Wands, I typically think of that as the Knight of Wands, but more mature, right? The Knight of Wands would be that individual who's like, oh, I want this, I'm going to go here, do this, I want that, I'm going to go here, do that. And they really scatter themselves, right? Really kind of have a tendency to drive so much that there's this burnout. But the King of Wands is the person who knows how to take that passionate energy and be intelligent enough to know what to put that into, what to not put that into, right? You see the king here, he's very thoughtful, So the point being here is like you were moving in the right direction, and it's fine for you to put your energy, your time, and your resources into what it is that you want, but you want to try to be a little bit more intelligent about it so that way you put your energy and your resources toward the correct things in the correct ways in order to kind of help you succeed. Next up, I have the Two of Swords reversed. Now, when I'm looking at the Two of Swords reversed, I'm actually reading this in the way that most readers today would typically read the Two of Swords upright, right? They would think that as the you shall not pass type of a card. The reality is the old meaning of the Two of Swords, the true meaning of the Two of Swords is actually I'm not impeding you, I'm not inhibiting you, right? Because if you would think of the individual with the swords crossed like this would be a very impractical position to fight from, and they're blindfolded, so they're not really stopping. But since I've got this card in reverse, this really kind of brings me into that energy that a lot of people would think of like the you shall not pass. So you need to be able to kind of have a little bit clarity on your boundaries here on, like I said, like maybe if, for example, you want to spend some money, on something, you have to be intelligent enough to realize when to say no. You have to be intelligent enough to look at your resources and say, I'm not going to do this particular thing because I need it for that particular thing instead. Okay, and this is fine, right? We move into the Three of Wands next, all right? The Three of Wands being that seeing the world ahead of you, imagining the possibilities. The two boys here looking in the map book, but what I'm getting when I'm looking at this here is actually kind of more of like a budgeting type of a thing. Maybe you're looking at your books, your finances, these types of things. If you're intelligent enough to be able to keep track of your resources, this is still going to allow you to succeed. This is still going to allow you to be able to do the things, right? Maybe you want to go out for dinner, but it's the difference between where you go to eat, right? Do you go to that expensive restaurant because you really truly want to impress somebody? Or do you go somewhere that's, it's still nice, but, doesn't cost you an arm and a leg? Managing your resources right now is going to allow you to move forward in a direction that you want without overextending, without really kind of like taking too much from areas that you need to be able to put other energy and time into, right? Now, when you come to this understanding, when you come to that, managing your resources properly, you get into the Eight of Swords. The Eight of Swords is that ability to really kind of step outside of our limitations to realize, you can take the blindfolds off, you can take the bindings off, like you would see in the Rider-Waite-Smith, right? The Queen here, wrapped up in the vines, she realizes the situation she got herself in. She realizes that the experience she's having is her own creation. And because the creation that she's experiencing right now was her doing, she also understands that she has the ability to get out of it. You can fix whatever circumstance or you can correct whatever imbalance that maybe you're experiencing right now to kind of bring you back on track. And that's, when things move forward, we got the Wheel of Fortune. You will be back on top, right? Obviously, with the Wheel of Fortune, we have this idea of the ups and downs of life, right? Maybe one day you're down, maybe the next day you're up. So you're not going to stay in this situation or position where you're at right now. You know that things are going to change, things are going to continue to move on. Right now, next up, I have strength. Okay. So when it comes to strength, there really is this understanding of how to, have a healthy connection with our desires, a healthy connection with what it is that we want for ourselves, right? You know, it's not necessarily that anything is very bad or very good. You understand that what you want and the desire and drive that you have toward your life, toward the things that feel meaningful toward you, are there to support you. It is for your growth. So if you're able to come to a healthy, peaceful, calm relationship with that inner power, with that inner energy and drive and force within yourself, this is going to be where your equilibrium at. This is going to be where your expansion is. I have the 8 of Wands next, okay? And in the 8 of Wands in this deck, you have the boy on the dragon here taking off. So you understand the desires, you understand the impulses and the things that you are working toward are for your expansion, are for your growth. And if you have that healthy, peaceful, courageous, loving relationship with these inner desires, with that power that drives you from within, you can expand rather than kind of put yourself in certain circumstances. When you come to this understanding of what it is that you desire within yourself, when you come to this understanding of what these things are important to you, and that fire and that drive, that's when you're able to attract things towards you, right? The Queen of Wands. So instead of taking all this action, I have to do this to get the result, I have to do that to get the result. When you understand what it is that you're really looking for, when you understand what it is that's motivating you to take certain actions or spend certain resources and time, then instead of you having to give, the universe naturally gives it to you. You're right. You naturally attract to you the things that you want. It's this shift from a mentality of like, I have to force a thing to happen or I have to take certain actions, to realizing that the universe, in fact, can provide for you to be able to have the thing that you're looking for, to be able to have that heart's desire, that inner drive come to some sort of fruition, right? This is how you can come to this hanged man energy or hanged fae, right? He's, swinging on these vines by choice, right? He didn't get this way by accident. You can take a moment to step back and really look at things from a new perspective. And by looking at things from this new perspective, this is going to allow you to move forward successfully and realize that, in fact, you do have all the resources. You do already have the thing that you are pushing forward toward, the Ace of Pentacles, right? That is that cornucopia energy, that abundance, the enough, and knowing that you already have what it is that you're wanting, right? And this is where we come into this transformation, right? The Judgment card. Judgment being that wake up call, that, really knowing who you are and what is your purpose. All right, friend, I hope this was helpful for you. If you liked the video, go ahead and leave a like for me. Drop a comment. I would absolutely love it if you would drop a comment. Drop me a sunflower emoji if you don't know what to put. That really, really helps out the algorithm quite a bit. In case you haven't heard, I'm also doing short stories and fairy tales interpreted through the tarot. So you might like this video here. Go ahead and check that out. Or if you want to check out some more tarot readings, you can check out this playlist here. And I will see you in the next one.